Hi and welcome to Off Script with Sam Monk. My name's Jake. We want to talk about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. And this is our Shout Episode 2 special, our Shout special at Off Script. And it's great to have Sam here. Sam, last episode, we talked about the origin story of Shout.
Yeah, Shout Conference.
Shout Conference.
Yeah, not just
shouting.
Yeah.
Well, Jake, when did you learn to shout? Well, when I was a little kid, I shouted a lot. Yeah. So we talked about that, and you talked about, we started in the upper theatre of the Mercury, which was about 150 seats, say, and then the daunting move to move downstairs into the, so now it's probably, 300 seats down there. So talk about how Shout grew.
Downstairs, 580.
Right, 580.
In the main theatre.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
So you started to grow, and people started to think, this thing is cool.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because that's a journey both for you, I guess, personally as well, like the faith to start to occupy bigger spaces. Like, how did it grow? Why did it grow? Talk.
Well, we grew and we started filling the Mercury Theatre, so that space was...
That must have felt massive at the time.
Yeah, it was great to see that space fill, and it just had a touch of God on it. And there was a hunger and a desire, to keep on going and expanding. But the challenge came when you're going from a space that you owned, the Mercury Theatre, to a space that you're hiring, because there's a different level of cost and complexity that's involved in that. But, we felt God was taking the whole church on this journey of going from a place where we were a set-up church. We were all set in the Mercury Theatre to a place where we were packing in and packing out. And so that whole dynamic really, the growth of Shout helped us as a church navigate some of those complexities of occupying bigger spaces. And so, I remember going into the Aotea Centre and thinking, wow, this is a big venue.
It's the biggest venue in the whole world.
And as it goes with hiring bigger venues also, wow, this is costing a lot of money, because you're hiring everything, and you're paying for every little thing you use. But over the years, we just found, God supplied our needs as we've created and spoken to the vision. God's brought about the provision. But one thing we said from the start, because we just wanted the heart of, or the spirit of a volunteer to just pervade every aspect of Shout. And, from the start, we've just said, no matter what role you play in Shout, serving any aspect, if you're part of Equippers Church, let's all register. Let's all register, because we're actually investing into the vision of where we believe God wants to take this. Yeah. And that level of investment, along with the hours that people have served, has made Shout what it is. It's created the environment, I believe, for God to move. It's just that heart to volunteer and serve others. And we often say it was the servants at the wedding. They knew that the water had turned into wine. The guests, they didn't see the miracle.
True.
They just knew that the good wine came out last.
Yeah, true.
But in that whole miracle, it was those behind the scenes who actually saw the miracle. And the testimony over the years is it's those who have been engaged at a level where they're serving others and they're investing into the heart and the spirit of what we believe God wants to do. They're the ones, who come away with the most in a lot of places. Yeah.
So let me take a step back, because we've talked a lot on the podcast about team. Yeah. And one thing I think, people have really appreciated, and the feedback we've been getting, is a lot of the way that you work with team and empowering team and getting team on board has, been significant and really helped a lot of people. So talk about the moment, and I don't know whether you can define it, where you realize you had to move out of the Mercury, but you also, you can't do this by yourself. Yeah. You needed the team, and was there a conversation you had? Was there a sense of getting people together to go, hey guys, we need to occupy some bigger spaces? I mean, how did that sort of, I don't know if you can cast your mind back enough, but do you remember that moment or getting people on board with it? Or?
Well, it's, knowing we've always said, man, God wants to fill stadiums. It's one thing saying that, is another thing.
See, everyone's like, yeah, man, let's do this.
It's another thing actually positioning yourself for that to happen. Nothing worse than hiring a stadium and there's only a few people in there.
We've done that too.
Going,
it's
hello,
another podcast.
Hello,
We've been
hello.
there.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you're stepping out in faith in what you believe in your spirit. A lot of people declare those things. We want to see miracles. I often say this: we want to see miracles, but we don't want to be in a position where we need a miracle.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's awkward and that's tough. But I think what helped me just go into those spaces was surrounding myself with people who have occupied spaces that are bigger than me, and then being able to bring them into shout, minister into that, into our environment. It just releases a greater measure of faith and expectation. And one thing I've realized, having been in big spaces and meeting the people who have brought leadership to those spaces is they're not too dissimilar to the average person.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's just that faith and that confidence. Yeah. We just said, man, we've got to give it a go. We've got to give it a go. We're not going to die wondering in this. Because I heard for many years, these stadiums, God wants to occupy and fill. And so, you can say that. That's nice words. But
until you actually try and fill them.
Until you try and do that. And so God's just been so good over the years. And again, what happens in a prophetic encounter moment is worth the investment. You can, spend money on many different things, but a catalytic moment that can change the direction of somebody's life, it's worth the spend. And I think there's so many people, that costs a lot of money and different things like that, but they don't get upset at the Olympics.
True.
And there's far more money spent.
We're not spending billions here, man.
For the Olympics, and they're doing it for a medal that tarnishes and fades.
Right.
But what we're doing is something that's going to last into eternity. And, it's amazing how many people go, they don't get upset when Beyonce or somebody comes into town and they pay, $350 for a ticket to go to that. And so often we're charging, $100 for 4 nights and 3 days. And it's like, whoa, that's too much money. But I love the fact that, now we've got some promoters coming in and even looking at our stage sets to get inspiration of what's being created at Shout. And it's like, but it's interesting people's mentality, just even around that. And I'm just so thankful that we've got a group of people that just say, hey, we're going to invest into this because we believe, in the impact it's having in people's lives. Yeah,
that's good. I can still remember a moment, and I talk about this a few different times in the RTF Centre. And the RTF, if you don't know, the building is sort of, I guess, about 2,200 probably seats back in the day. And we always felt as a team, didn't we? We always want to fill spaces. God's always honoured that. We've always filled spaces. And we hired it, and I can remember it was the Saturday night. I think it was the last night. And I'm standing there, sort of, I think just sitting behind you. And there's this moment in worship. God's doing amazing things. And I remember just sort of standing and turning around, and it's got 3 tiers to the building. And you've just about got every hand lifted. There's tears, there's just this amazing worship environment. And for me personally, and at that stage I was sort of overseeing the budget, which is terrifying if people know the situation. But overseeing the budget, but thinking, man, we do have to, there's some things that I was really going through internally, but to see that environment, to see the house full like that was just powerful. It's a real journey for me to give the confidence to go, man, God was always in it and He was always there. And like God's saying, I'll deal with those things, but you create the space for me to move and I'll come in and do it.
God's attracted to emptiness.
Yeah.
I like this story, where they had to put out the jars, and as many jars as they put out were filled. And so often we want God to fill, but we're not prepared to get the empty jar.
Yeah.
It's like we've got to get the empty jar before God can fill it. And God's attracted to that emptiness, and that's the space that he wants to come and fill in our own lives, but I believe, right around.
Yeah, I still remember your example of, it's the size of the vessel that we give to God, and, we sometimes go to a waterfall with a little thimble full, and, oh, God, if you could just fill that, and you look at the size of the waterfall and the size of your vessel, and you're thinking, actually, we need larger vessels, don't we? We need larger spaces, we need bigger faith environments for God to do something amazing.
Yeah, and this has been a journey over many years of where we've grown into something, so it wasn't just...
That's a good point,
it wasn't just we went from the upper theatre to the Spark Arena.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It was like, hey, God, we've seen you be faithful here, in this, and at every level, every season, should I say, we just say, God, what are you wanting to do in the next season? Because we don't want to just put on a conference for the sake of putting on a conference. Is it still serving the purpose we originally had, and which is to bring people into a prophetic encounter space? Where there's celebration, where there's a coming together of family, where there's a connection, just even the connection that happens. Having been a movement where we've sent out people all over the world, it's like, coming back, you just pick up where you left off. You haven't seen them for a period of time, but those relationships are the thing that, it's critical to holding it all together.
A significant ministry flows from it. We talk about it all the time, but it keeps coming up, doesn't it? That actually that significant ministry flows from significant relationship. And I think Shout is, in many levels, just represents that on a global scale, doesn't it? That actually our like you talk about the Israelites coming together. I mean, they celebrated for 7-8 days in celebrations. We're doing it for 3 or 4. Yeah. But that coming together of God's people for that common purpose to worship Him, it just does something in your spirit.
It does. Down tools, take the time, set aside the time. You do that, it's amazing what God can do. Yeah.
And I guess, I came in first, I think it was 2007, was it Jesus epidemic? Jesus. I can't remember. I keep thinking epidemic's got the word in my mind. But it was, and again, just...
You can't say that.
No, you can't say that.
Climate. A Jesus pandemic?
But, but it was certainly... I remember coming back from London. I was working in London and got encouraged to come and take a look, and by Mark Collett, our pastor in London, and came back, and that was awesome. I remember meeting James Roy, who's one of our pastors in our movement, for the first time there before he was, doing that. And again, we all had kind of, little kids or no kids or whatever. And again, the relationships over years that have been formed at Shout now and where it's at now and what God's doing. But He's still doing the same thing. He's still, you have the large crowds, but that's not the only thing. It's not just, oh man, let's fill a room. But I can remember years ago, Dr. Michael Maiden came and he prophesied, and he was walking around the room. And then he looked up at a girl who was on our hosting team. She had a high-vis jacket right at the back of if you can imagine, Spark Arena. It's a big arena. And there was, 3,500 people. Then right at the back, he saw this lady. And he prophesied about her mum. And you could see the lady just kind of fall to the ground, you know. And I just thought, that's just incredible. Mm-hmm. So in an environment where you've got thousands of people, isn't it cool that God still speaks to the one? Yeah. And He always does that. And that's why it's so special. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the heart we want to continue to foster. And, as it grows, we don't want it just to become another event. It's got to have that relational aspect to it, but also that personal touch. And naturally that brings logistics into how you do that. But I'm glad that we've got a team who are just trying to create an environment where that is possible.
That's possible, yeah. And that's pretty special, eh? Hey, that was Off Script with Sam Monk, Shout Special Edition number 2. We've got one more coming up as well, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, we'll see you soon.